All right, Street Tombs is let's call them a death metal band. A death metal band with heavy influences from thrash metal, death thrash metal, uh, a little bit of D beat and hardcore punk in there too. And this is their full length debut. They haven't used any of their old demo era songs. They've been around since 2017 or so. And this record it intends to be a step beyond what they did on their three demos. And in a lot of ways, it's a real success in terms of turning that thing that they were working towards into another thing. And most of that finds a place in between the modern, a little bit more primitive take on old school death metal without going metalcore with it like so many do. 90s hardcore influence, chunking stuff. This is not that. It's much more influenced by thrash metal. And we get a lot more of that in their formative stage. The first album kind of kicks off in like a very exploited era, like 80s exploited era beats and riffs, and there's a sort of a upcoming thrash crossover feeling to some of those uh, riffs, and then they move on to more standard death metal style after that on the next two, where they reach for a little bit more atmosphere and guitar leads on the third demo, and that was a standard they met somewhere between the weird side of Autopsy and the simpler punkish side of Master early on, and I wouldn't say that they sound just like that, but the riffs hit in a similarly blunt and somewhat varied way. You will get a little on this album. You'll get uh, a little bit of variety in that sense, and well, we'll cut to a clip here that'll show just the general sound, and we can get an idea for where it could go. So that song "Devour" is kind of the breakout point on the album. It's one of them that it introduces a little bit of Death Doom, a little, there's some keyboards in there. They're really reaching for a little bit more than they were doing before, after they sort of reintroduced themselves with their established sound on the first couple of songs. I would argue even the second song on the album goes a little further than they would have on any of their demo era releases, and this is pretty impressive. I think that the first half of the record is just sharp start to finish. All kind of hit it out of the park in terms of explaining exactly what Street Tunes is all about. It covers all those bases that were interesting about them. And then that leaves side B, the second half, to just kind of hold pace and try to kick back to some of those thrash influenced moments. And for me, it stalls out a little bit. It doesn't blow me away from that point. It doesn't seem to go anywhere. The finale is pretty cool, but they stop leaning into some of those doom or slower ideas that really pulled me in on the first couple of listens, so that it's just a little bit flat from that point on, and it affects the score considerably, but not too bad. I think this is still a sharp recommendation. I think most people would instantly figure out what this is and enjoy the ride. But I don't know if the second half is just as good as that first introduction with all those great ideas hitting at once. Um, and maybe that's just the way they ordered it to catch early interest and pull people into for the full ride. So I enjoyed this one quite a bit. Of course, I think there's a lot of merit here. Where, a lot of old school death metal bands work up to that first album, and you're like, well, all right, you didn't do that much with it, but these guys did enough to where I want to hear what they're going to do next. And I think there's a lot of potential for where they could go with all those influences that are feeding in there. Um, I think adding in some more of the D beat influence stuff could flesh out some of those ideas, and maybe however that would result, I don't know. But there's a lot of cool potential here that I think they get close to hitting it out of the park with. So Read the full review if that interests you, and we'll listen to another clip of the band as you read the score.